and welcome to another my NT marriage video. The topic of today is compassion. In a previous video I talked about domestic violence and an ex of mine and how he'd never hit me. But I have started to remember things as it happens. And I remember this one time he kicked me. Now, he was the kind of guy that you couldn't say an actor on TV was nice looking without him flying into a rage. So we're walking along and I make a comment about how some guy is dressed, his appearance. It wasn't a provocative statement or anything like he's hot, nothing like that. You know, like cool t-shirt or nice logo, whatever it was, innocuous statement. And this guy just biffs me and I just kind of lurch forward. It didn't hurt so much as it was uncomfortable, and it took me a while to realise what had happened. And I turn around to him and I'm like, "Did you kick me?" And he says yes, and then he goes into this tirade for about an hour about how he can't help himself and he suffered all this abuse, and then he talks about all the abuse and how it's not his fault and he's damaged and he needs help and I need to be supportive, yada, yada, yada. I mean, on and on and on. This rageful fit, just screaming and yelling. Everybody could hear. It was really quite embarrassing. And a few days later I said to my bestie, I feel really sorry for him, because he's so damaged, he's so broken, and I cannot put the pieces back together. I don't think anybody can put the pieces back together. And my bestie says the relationship's over once you feel sorry for somebody, because you can't build love from pity. And I knew she was right. If I'd stayed, I would have been staying simply because I felt sorry for him and not because I loved him. Because he was a very hard person to love. He was just too broken. And obviously I feel bad for him about that. It's not his fault he had this shitty upbringing. It's not his fault he suffered all that abuse. It's not his fault. He just was, broken. And he couldn't afford to get help, yada, yada, yada. You know, so it was very problematic for him, and I felt bad for him about that, but I couldn't stay because of it. And so where am I going with this story, you might be wondering? Well, it dawned on me recently that I have had a similar feeling with regards to my Aspie husband, except in his case it's more empathy and compassion. I feel bad for him because he doesn't know what he doesn't know. When I first moved in with him, he thought he had all the answers. He's watched his parents' relationship, he knows how to do it. And then I come along and I'm questioning everything. And that's off-putting to him. You know, I'm like, why aren't we having conversations? Why are you never trying to arouse me? Why don't you compliment me? Why don't we spend time together? Why don't we do anything together? And he's there thinking, what's going on here? I've got this. I'm a great catch. Everybody's told me my whole life I'm a great catch. I'm good looking, I've got a house, I've got a car, I've got a job. What's your problem, you know? And he was really bamboozled. And I could tell by his answers that he thought he had all the answers and he just didn't get what I was saying. Things like all relationships are like this. No, they're not. And I'd been in few relationships before him, so I knew none of my relationships were like him. None of my relationships resulted in me sitting for hours and days on end next to somebody who didn't interact with me. And he had moved me from one side of Australia to the other to sit with him, no friends, If he had friends, they didn't come over, he didn't socialise, we didn't do much of anything, and we would just sit there in this quiet hell and I was just going stir crazy, and he's telling me all relationships are like this, and I thought, that's such a naive, ignorant statement. You just have to not know you don't know in order to make a silly statement like that. And things like, my exes never said anything, they never had any problems with me. Oh, you mean the ones that left you because you were cold and distant? And many of them only lasted a few months, those girlfriends? They weren't saying anything because they just left. And so here I am, I'm saying things, and he's bamboozled. He just doesn't get it. He can't understand why I'm not happy, and he doesn't understand how to make me happy, because he's never been in this situation before where he had somebody questioning him. And so I just started to feel bad for him. Not sorry for him, because it's a different situation. He wasn't damaged goods like my ex. He wasn't this broken, unfixable thing. He was just more ignorant and naive. And so I had empathy for him because he just didn't know stuff. He wasn't as cluey as I was, as knowledgeable as I was, which is so ironic because we were so young that I wasn't as knowledgeable as I thought I was. Well, I mean, I was, but I wasn't. I was more knowledgeable than him. Quite knowledgeable, I suppose, for my age, but obviously now that I'm older, I know much more. And we used to have these crazy sort of discussions about them. I've heard them described as circular, and that's kind of how it went for us. So I would raise a topic. He would first go into denial. There's nothing wrong with me. This is how all relationships work. Then he would go into blame. It's you, you're the one with the problem. You're the reason I'm not nice to you, you know. And then it would go into a sort of, maybe you've got a point, all right, I'll try. And then the next day it would be like no conversations had ever taken place. And when I say this, it was kind of like I'd raise it one day and get all the denial, and then get the shutdown and the quiet, and I'm ignoring you for 3 days. I'd raise it again, get all of the denial. Raise it again later, all the denial. So this is going on for weeks. Raise it again, and then I'm getting the blame. It's you, you're the fault, you're the fault, you're the fault. And then that goes on for another set of weeks. And then it was finally the explosion, all right, I'll try. And then the next day, it's like nothing was ever said at all, ever, for all of those weeks. He gets up, he goes to work, he comes home, and there is no communication, nothing. And I'm there sort of scratching my head like, what the hell is going on here? And so that was sort of how it was going. And so I knew that there was something off, but I just didn't know what. And he was not awful enough person, say like my ex with his hour-long tirade about how broken he was. He wasn't like that. He wasn't a bad person to be around. He wasn't, especially back then, he wasn't aggro. He wasn't with the put-downs. He'd say the odd statement, of course, because I'm the blame, you know. I'm the fault of why he's not being nice to me or kind or caring or whatever. And on that note, like I've mentioned before, he thought he was Mr. Romantic, you know. He used to do Valentine's once a year, buy me teddies and chocolate, and think that that meant he was romantic. And just for the record, for anybody out there who thinks that doing Valentine's makes you romantic, it doesn't. Valentine's is the reminder that if you haven't done anything through the year, this is the day to do it, because you're so unromantic, you need this one day reminder to do something. That's not romantic. Romance is actually people who do things like that spontaneously and often, as some of my exes did. So here's this guy, he thinks he's romantic because he does Valentine's, and that does not make him romantic. But he just didn't know this. He had no understanding. And so if we jump forward to now, he believes that he's a good catch. He believes that he loves me and the children. He believes he shows us love in different ways. He'll go to work and buy food for us so that while he's gone, we have stuff to eat. So from his perspective, he's putting in a big effort. He's doing as much as he can. He feels that he is doing a good job. And that's where my empathy and compassion come in, because he is. He's not doing the job I want, but we can't all get what we want, evidently. He's still not, meeting my needs in other ways. But as far as he's concerned, he loves us and he's a good man and he's a good catch and he would do anything for us. So that's why I have compassion for him and empathy. He can't help that he's got this condition. He doesn't exactly want this condition. He wishes that he was different, maybe better. I don't know if that's a word he would use. He certainly wishes that he could change the past. He wishes he could go back in time and just have done things better. But obviously you can't wish for a better past. The past is the past. And even I see this in my ASD son, who's late teens now. When I talk to him about things, he'll come up with sort of a reply here and there. And I can just tell by how he's talking that he thinks he has all the answers too. He thinks that he's just going to cruise through life because he knows it all already. No sort of real understanding of all the things that he doesn't know. And no understanding of all the things that I know that he doesn't know. He just kind of assumes that either I don't know stuff or he knows more than he thinks he does. So it's a really interesting dynamic, and I sort of look at him as a young teen now, an older teen now, but a young man. And I see my husband as that young man thinking that he just knew it all, he's got this. His parents act a certain way. When he goes into a relationship, he's just going to do that and everything will fall into place and all will be well. And obviously that wasn't the case. And I also have compassion in another sense, and that is, I know a lot of people in relationships, and none of those relationships are perfect. None of those relationships are gold. They all have their troubles and issues. In fact, I don't meet a lot of people who are like deliriously happy in their relationships. It's like we all get to a point where we just kind of plod along, accepting our fate. And so that's one other thing that sort of made me stay. Aside from better the devil you know, I just don't imagine that if I'd had a different relationship, I would have no issues. I would just have different issues. And it's not even necessarily that if that guy was neurotypical, they would be workable and fixable. They might not. And me personally, I don't dare to take that risk. I'm a bit chicken in that sense, I suppose. The concept of leaving my husband to go out into the dating world to meet God knows who with God knows what issues and hope that it's better, ooh, kind of makes me cringe. I just don't. I don't know, maybe I've just lost my faith in relationships. I think that happens as you get older too. You start to get a bit wiser and maybe a bit jaded. Anyway, Yeah. So it's compassion and empathy that have made me stay. It's compassion and empathy that still make me stay. He's trying to be a good guy, do a good job. Sometimes I do this thing where I'll think of two words, job and guy, and go to say them at the same time. Just pointing that out, that's what my brain does. Anyway, so yeah, that's why I stay, because I just feel like he might not be meeting all of the needs, but he meets enough. I was about to say needs, that's what I mean. He meets enough to get us by. And because he stopped the raging, which is the one thing that I longed for probably the most, things have settled down. Anyway, so how about you? Do you have empathy and compassion for your partner? Is that what keeps you there? Or are you in a different situation like my first guy, where you just feel sorry for the guy? Comment below. I'd love to hear from you and to hear if this resonates with you. Can you relate? And of course, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it.